Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes life writes stories no author could ever imagine, and sometimes one question, one simple human question, has the power to unravel everything we thought we knew about worth, compassion, and the meaning of true wealth. It was an ordinary afternoon. A cold wind chased people off the streets, and in the bustle of the city's heartbeat, a young homeless girl, barefoot, wrapped in a worn-out jacket, stood outside a café window watching people eat. She wasn't begging, she wasn't making noise, she was just watching. Inside, a man in a sharp suit sat alone at a table near the glass. He was a millionaire, known for his investments, his cars, and his name etched into the city's skyline. And yet, on this day, the most significant moment of his life came not in a boardroom, but from the mouth of a little girl. She walked in shyly, trembling. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for leftovers. She simply asked, "Can I eat with you?" And in that moment, the world paused. Sometimes we think strength is in answers, but real strength shows up in the questions we're brave enough to ask. Because asking takes more than curiosity. It takes vulnerability. It takes the willingness to be told no. And sometimes it takes the kind of courage that only desperation can give birth to. That little girl, fragile as she looked, carried the courage most of us never find. She stood in front of someone who looked nothing like her, lived nothing like her, and still found the strength to say, "Can I eat with you?" It seems so simple, just a few words, but packed inside that question was an entire world of fear, hope, and silent longing. She risked rejection. She risked humiliation. She risked being reminded of every door that had closed in her face before, and still, she asked, how many of us, grown and comfortable, are too afraid to do the same? How many sit in silence, aching for help, but too scared to say a word because we've been told that strength means having it all together? How many of us swallow our needs because we've learned to wear pride like armor, even as we break inside? Her question wasn't just about food. It was about something deeper. It was about belonging, about being noticed, about being worthy of sharing space and warmth and kindness. It wasn't a plea for a meal. It was a quiet cry for connection, for dignity, for proof that someone still saw her as human. And in that moment, her question became a mirror, not for her, but for us. Would you have answered differently? Would you have looked away? Or would you have seen her? The millionaire stared at her. A girl barely old enough to be alone, clothes torn, shoes worn down, eyes heavy with hunger and rejection. She had only whispered 5 words, "Can I eat with you?" Everyone else in the cafe looked away, some with discomfort, others with judgment, as if her presence disrupted their polished world. But he didn't look away. He stood up, pulled out the chair beside him, and said gently, "Of course, sit down." Then he turned to the waiter and ordered 2 of everything on the menu. No hesitation, no performance. Just quiet dignity, and that one moment, it shattered every myth we're told about wealth. Money buys meals, it buys tables, it buys polished floors, soft chairs, and silver cutlery. But what gives those things meaning is humanity. Compassion is the true luxury. He didn't see her as a problem to solve or a scene to avoid. He saw a person, a soul, a story still being written. And instead of dismissing her, he chose to share his space, his time, his attention. That's the kind of wealth money can't measure. The cafe fell silent. People watched. Maybe some even felt shame. But he wasn't trying to make a point. He was just being who he was, a man who understood that human dignity has no price tag. That kindness is not charity, it's recognition. Strip away the labels. Homeless, rich, poor, clean, dirty. Remove the assumptions, the stares, the pride. What's left is a truth most ignore. We are all made of the same breath, the same hunger to be seen, heard, and respected. And in that moment, he reminded the world that true wealth isn't counted in currency. It's measured in compassion, in the ability to see someone and say, "You matter. Sit with me." They ate together. They laughed. She told him about the park bench she'd slept on, the socks she'd lost, and how people would cross the street just to avoid walking past her. She wasn't asking for money. She wasn't begging for sympathy. She just wanted to sit, to eat, to feel human again. And in that booth with that plate of food, she wasn't a homeless girl. She was just a girl, a person, a soul deserving of warmth, not pity. He didn't look at her like a problem to be solved. He didn't ask her why she was there or what mistakes she had made. He simply saw her, and being seen, truly seen without judgment or condition, can feel like the first drop of water after a long drought. That meal wasn't gourmet, it wasn't grand, but it was shared, it was warm, it was offered with kindness instead of scrutiny. That's what made it powerful. Most people walk by, some drop a coin, some look away in discomfort. Others whisper blame behind closed car windows. But very few stop to remember that dignity isn't reserved for the privileged. It belongs to everyone. That one moment, that one meal, didn't fix her circumstances, but it shifted something inside her. A flicker of hope, a whisper that she wasn't invisible, that she still mattered, because when someone feels dignity again, when someone feels seen, heard, and treated with care, they begin to remember who they are. Not the labels others throw at them, not the pain they've carried, but the truth of their worth. And when that happens, healing begins, not just for them, but for the world that paused long enough to share a table. Because real change doesn't start with grand speeches. It starts with compassion, one plate at a time. The story didn't end with the meal. What began as a moment of compassion inside a quiet café turned into a catalyst for transformation. The millionaire didn't just share a meal. He shared his heart, his time, and his belief in someone the world had dismissed. He connected her with a local shelter, ensuring she had a roof over her head and a safe place to sleep. But he didn't stop there. He covered the costs of her education, enrolling her in programs that would give her the tools to build a future she could be proud of. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to rebuild herself, not just her life, but her identity, her sense of worth, and her purpose. She didn't forget where she came from, the park bench, the cold nights, the strangers who looked the other way. All of it stayed with her, not as a source of shame, but as fuel, because today, she walks those same streets, but not in need. She walks them with purpose. As a social worker, she now works with children who are living the very life she once escaped. She listens to their stories, not as a stranger, but as someone who truly understands. She became the very person she needed when she was young and lost and invisible. And it all traces back to that single moment. That one question, "Can I eat with you?" And the man who didn't hesitate to say yes. That yes sparked a chain reaction, a ripple effect that changed more than one life. One act of kindness didn't just feed a hungry girl, it fed hope, it built trust. It planted a seed that grew into something powerful. Sometimes, the smallest acts of grace have the longest reach. They echo in lives we'll never even meet. You don't need millions. You don't need to be powerful. You don't need headlines or fame. What you need, what we all need, is the courage to notice. To notice the ones who are overlooked. To notice the silence in someone's eyes, the quiet ache in their presence, the invisible weight they carry. It doesn't take wealth to see someone, it takes heart. It takes the decision to care, even when it's not convenient. There are people walking past you today, people who aren't asking for your money or even your help. They're simply asking to be remembered. They're asking not to be forgotten in a world that moves too fast. They're hoping, just hoping, that someone might pause long enough to say, "I see you, you matter." And sometimes the smallest act, a smile, a shared seat, a kind word, can make them believe again. We all have a table. It may not be big, it may not be fancy, but it's a place where love is served, where dignity is restored, where loneliness is replaced by belonging. A place where someone can finally exhale. Maybe you can't fix everything. Maybe you can't change the whole world. But what if you're the person who changes someone's world just by saying, "You can sit with me"? So I ask you, look around, who's standing on the edge hoping for a seat, praying not to be invisible today? Don't miss your moment. Don't let this life pass by with unopened hearts and untouched kindness. Because when it's all said and done, people won't remember your resume. They'll remember how you made them feel when they felt forgotten. And maybe their whole story changes when you say the simplest words, "Of course, sit down, let's eat."